Gosha Rubchinskiy was the up-and-coming brand once upon a time. Predating Demna, he brought Eastern European aesthetics to the forefront at a pivotal time in menswear, becoming one of the buzziest names in the industry. However, following some very serious accusations surrounding teen boys, seemingly all of that was ripped away as he became one of the very few designers ever to truly be iced out of the industry. But firstly, that synopsis may not be the truth, and secondly, it looks like, thanks to Kanye West, Gosha may be making a return. Really quickly before we start, I just wanted to let you guys know that I've started posting on Threads, so if you're on Threads, follow me over there. Thank you. Gosha's business began with Spring-Summer 09, named in English Evil Empire. The collection showcased Russian streetwear and included simple elements that he would become known for, like socks over tracksuit bottoms, tracksuit jackets, studs, and shaved heads. However, this collection wasn't the start of his career, as he'd been building a name for himself in the art scene in Moscow, where he was a street photographer known for emulating now disgraced photographer Terry Richardson. And you can see this influence in his work. The photographs were harsh, the lighting was stark, and the work was aesthetically unapologetic. Gosha's photography was highly praised, often featured young boys or teens, as well as drunken stupors and purposefully inflammatory imagery, one of which a boy in a swastika t-shirt that I obviously couldn't include. There were other kinds of photos, but his main area of photographical interest were these boys and their surroundings, and because we're talking about this in a fashion context, I am purposely only including the images with people made previous to his fashion debut that got him to consider fashion as a viable path, but I will link the Flickr account below if you'd like to see the pictures without people. So, it was this photography work that came to inform his debut collection. Specifically, the collection, much like his photography, was inspired by post-Soviet youth who had their childhood affected by the political, economic, and cultural changes seen after the dissolution of the USSR in 1991. This is exactly why he reasoned the use of these young boys, because he related to them, being that he was only 7 when the USSR dissolved and 24 when he put on his first show referencing this. The show seemingly went down fairly well. Though we don't have any reviews of the show currently online, we do know that about 700 people came to it and that he had gained a stockist in Twin Shop just from this one show alone. So naturally, things had started rather explosively for the designer, and it wouldn't take long for him to make his fashionable return. His second show, Growing and Expanding, Autumn/Winter 09, continued these themes of post-Soviet youth, but combined this with how that tied to the developing online world, or specifically its lack of regulation allowing the corruption of youth during a period where they were at their most hopeful about the world, having just come out of Soviet Russia. It was this contradiction of ideas that fed a very interesting aesthetic language coming from the youth and then documented by Gosha. Something that his feature in Vice later that year, detailing a lookbook shot by Gosha, likely discussed, going off of this blog post that references it, and something that Demna himself would later comment on in a much more blatant way that exposes what kinds of material were available to children at this time, potentially what Gosha was referencing, and specifically what Gosha was commenting on. In terms of how that all transferred to retailing, Gosha may not have been aware of what he was doing, but he was commercializing an untapped aesthetic in fashion and doing it in an incredibly graphic manner that was easy to understand solely from the visual language. Meanwhile, the clothes themselves were very easily commodified, as they consisted of already existing and popular garments like t-shirts and sweats that were just reframed in this new and desirable manner. In short, much like the streetwear brands of America and Japan, he took this already established aesthetic from Russia and built a world around it that made it desirable fashionably. It's really no wonder that he saw a quick success, growing his stockist lists by just the second season, including an invitation to create an installation for a then new store named Kuznetsky Mo's 20 store, or KM20, that went on to be quite a big deal in fashion in Moscow. And even abroad, the brand was beginning to make waves with increasing features in magazines like 032C that printed his photographical brochure aglets that was prepared as supplementary material for his second collection. All of this promotion simply could not have come at a better time. his collections had been working actually to become a trilogy, and the finale, The Sun Rises Not Far Behind the Mountains, was just around the corner, offering a blatant opportunity to fashion editors and professionals to champion his climax, making them seem more in the know and making Gosha seem more important. The Sun Rises Not Far Behind the Mountains was visualized in 3 parts: a video filmed in Sistrelyusk and hosted at the Cycles and Seasons event in Moscow, which many influencers, including Brian Boy, attended, a series of photographs bound together in a book, and the collection itself, which was presented in an exhibition of guys working out in the clothes in a disused gym in Moscow's suburbs. It was incredibly hard to find even images of this, but video footage did once exist on Dazed, though it has since been removed. Also, much like his first 2 collections, there are no online reviews that I could find, regardless of if I searched in English or in Russian. So unfortunately, it's hard to know much about the work directly, but we can assume that it was well received due to his next show, named Slave, being included in London's Fashion East menswear installation. This work, Slave, was not about fashion, but it was a recreation of his childhood bedroom during the dissolution of the USSR in 1991, which well displayed the world building of his brand while legitimizing his stance not only as a fashion creator, but an artist, bridging this gap between photography, art, and fashion in a totally new aesthetic. Bearing in mind this was 4 years before Demna's Vêtements debut, this idea of commodifying Eastern European aesthetics just hadn't come to the forefront of fashion yet. It was fresh and new, and he was quickly praised by the fashion industry for it, even scoring a solo exhibition in Berlin with 032C that also both had a catalogue and showed his documentary Sistrelyusk, which unfortunately are both lost to time. So, Gosha was a real rising star in 2010, but you'll notice that his last 2 pieces of work had little to do with fashion. And frankly, that's because of cost. Fashion is famously very hard to profit from for small businesses, and considering that he was in Russia, it was particularly hard to get the logistics to buy, print, and sell profitably, despite, if this unboxing video of a t-shirt from his second collection is to be believed, him buying cheap, mass-produced t-shirts from China to print his early collection graphics on. Frankly, regardless of the strides that he took, both to cut costs and to meet demand, it was no longer financially viable for him to move forward with fashion, and he was forced to wait. He was out of the industry for about a year, in fact, according to this interview that he conducted at the ICA, but that's not to say that he stopped working. He continued his work in photography as well as the 2 exhibitions that I just mentioned. He also released a very small collection with an American company named Altamont for Spring-Summer 12, but really that was under the name Aglet, which was a theme from the 3rd collection, so it's more like an extension of The Sun Rises Not Far Behind the Mountains than its own standalone season. In fact, it was only after he was contacted by Comme de Garçons, who he had been stalked by before in London's Dover Street Market, that he was given enough of a reason to return that he just couldn't turn down. For an undisclosed amount of money, Comme des Garçons purchased all the brand's intellectual property and took over their production, sales, marketing, and distribution. I don't believe they purchased the entire brand because everywhere this deal is described as a partnership, but it's certainly very close to an acquisition that saw the baited return of Gosha Rubchinskiy for autumn-winter 2012. This collection was a huge turning point for the brand. The collection was far more commercial than before, in the sense that it's expanded its product base to now include knits, and they've also pulled from previous collections to make running themes, such as the Rasviet print, which was first seen in his second collection, Autumn-Winter 09. It was a really strong commercial return in terms of product offering, but from the promotional side, at least in my opinion, looking at this in retrospect, the video in combination with the music used, which I'll play a small portion of now, gave a scarier vibe to the brand that I don't personally read from his previous work, which to me was more angsty than it was scary. It seems that they understood this too, because from here, as sales grew steadily from Autumn-Winter 12 through Autumn-Winter 14, they developed back to the more angsty vision that was initial to the brand. Meanwhile, they continued to develop signifiers such as this shape of vest, stripes, and the rubber tag in Spring-Summer 13, these flat studs, and in general this kind of plain collar in Autumn-Winter 13, this symbol that would go on to be a huge signifier, along with the Rasviet text, or Russian text in general, and bucket hats for Spring-Summer 14. And for Autumn-Winter 14, their first proper collab with these camper shoes, patchwork, and this kind of a duffel coat. The brand had been ironed out. It was running smoothly with Comme des Garçons logistics and collection planning, and though it still wasn't truly making a profit, there was potential there. Potential enough for Adrian Joff, president of Comme des Garçons and husband of Raquel Kubo, to agree to Gosha's first catwalk presentation in spring 2015. It was certainly a risk to put on the show, but it far surpassed expectations in terms of pushing the Gosha brand out there into the zeitgeist. Show Studio did a panel. I remember several outlets at the time, like 032C, covering the show, and even I personally was influenced to go to Dover Street Market specifically to try on the clothes. It was a huge success, and pieces like the Gosha Rubchinskiy logo print t-shirt, the two-piece tracksuit, and the alien knit were just everywhere in London, and if I remember correctly, in Tokyo as well, they were also very popular, truly exploding the brand in terms of popularity. By Autumn-Winter 15, they made 25,000 units. By Spring-Summer 16, sales were up 350% and sold out in 2 days. And by Autumn-Winter 16, they were up to 50,000 units produced. It was a real phenomenon in streetwear, to which Adrian Joff was quoted saying it couldn't be kept on the shelves, with graphic t-shirts and accessories selling the best. Just from personal recollection of talking to the staff members in Dover Street, I remember it was specifically this jumper, this t-shirt, and this scarf, as well as the socks that sold extremely fast from Autumn-Winter 15, then this set and the 1984 t-shirt from Spring-Summer 16, and these nets and belts from Autumn-Winter 16. Gosha was a real moneymaker for Dover Street, and so in 2016, Comme and Gosha came back together to release Rasviet, which is spelled in English as Paccbet, as a diffusion line, obviously to bring in more revenue from the ever-increasing profile of the designer. The label was a collaboration with Tolia Titev, and honestly was quite similar to the Gosha namesake label, but was even more explicitly for skaters, even producing a line of skateboards in his ongoing desire for great world building. This really was the huge growth period for Gosha. He was the buzziest designer on the scene, even to the point that he was turning down stockists to control the narrative of his brand, according to the Show Studio panel on his Spring-Summer 17 show. This was certainly continued from Spring-Summer 17 to Autumn-Winter 17, Spring-Summer 18, and Autumn-Winter 18, in which he was also seeing a lot of brand collaborations like Fila in Spring-Summer 17, Adidas in Autumn-Winter 17, Burberry in Spring-Summer 18, and Levi's and Dr. Martens in Autumn-Winter 18 that actually also saw a continuation of his Adidas and Burberry collabs. All of which added to his previous collaborations with brands like Reebok and Camper that evidenced his commercial prowess at that time and ability for providing that link between all of these quite different brands and the streetwear market. They provided him a quick injection of cash, and he provided them an element of cool, even to the effect that he was chosen to design the Adidas set for the 2012 World Cup. Gosha was one of the biggest stars in underground streetwear, the top of his game. He had so much influence, in fact, that on April 4th, 2018, he announced that he wanted to swap things up and start producing one-off projects instead of formalized catwalk presentations, something that's incredibly hard to do for any brand, big or small, because it removes you from the PR machine that is Fashion Week and significantly reduces your exposure to the press. But saying that, he had already started to test the waters with this after his Autumn/Winter 17 show was held in Russia, forcing many to fly to Kaliningrad for the presentation, and had planned for the following 2 collections also to be held in Russia in accordance with his World Cup Adidas contract, which allowed him to show in 2 cities that would go on to host World Cup games. But this Autumn/Winter 18 catwalk, the one that was in partnership with Adidas, would actually be his last formal catwalk entirely. However, because of this announcement that he made, we don't know truly if this was intended as the end of the brand. There is potential that it was meant to totally close and for Gosha to move on to new projects like Aktibur, which was a skate shop he opened in July 2018, or of course it could have continued on a seasonless basis. It's just that before we got to see what his plans would have been, everything came crashing down prematurely when on December 8, 2018, Gosha would be accused of soliciting lewd photos from minors from 2 different accounts. Now, Fashion Roadman and FHTV both have really informative and entertaining videos on this topic. Roadman's from the time and FH's as a retrospective. However, both of them look upon this situation more sympathetically than how I remember the situation going down, so I plan this next section attempting to represent the many sides to the controversy so as to reflect the reasons for this discrepancy between our experiences and thus why it's still a contentious controversy today. On December 8, 2018, High Fashion Talk posted several screenshots onto Instagram and Facebook of Gosha talking to a then 16-year-old boy named Jan Silverling over Instagram DMs and WhatsApp chats where he asked the teen to go into the bathroom to take photos of himself. Outside of the screenshot, Jan, in his message to HFT, pointed out that in the discussion when stated his age, that Gosha continued to talk to him. But it was in the caption of the Instagram post that we can see further that it was HFT, not Jan, that alleged that the pictures Gosha was requesting from the boy were pornographic in nature. The second accusation, which also surfaced the same day from HFT, was similar in that in the screenshots provided, Gosha specifically says it's okay to be a little hard for the photos that he is requesting, which most assume to mean the model's genitalia. HFT noted in their caption that messages were deleted of Gosha requesting underwear photos from the model. However, this post didn't have the same impact to the public. Firstly, because the accuser was anonymous, so we don't actually know his age. Secondly, that it came after the initial accusation. And thirdly, because it's common during the casting process, which we know they were discussing because it's heavily implied in their first message, to ask for photos of models in their underwear so as to see the shape of their body. So, primarily with the first accusation running more heavily in the public, the story was shocking, and as a result was quickly picked up by Supreme Leaks News and by Diet Prada, both at that time fashion drama accounts, which specifically furthered the consensus that he was soliciting illicit photos of minors, guiding public fury to be pointed at Gosha. On the same day or the following day, several more traditional outlets like WWD, ID, and Dazed contacted the team at Gosha Rubchinskiy and Dover Street Market and were quickly met with a statement from the brands, this one screenshotted from hypebeast.com. They said, "This was a street casting for a lookbook shoot. The person sent a direct mail to us asking to be considered for the casting. Gosha did a FaceTime with him and then he asked for a photo to have on file with all the others. The person said he wasn't alone and couldn't take photo, so Gosha suggested he just quickly goes to the bathroom and take a quick photo in the mirror so he could show the rest of the team and have it on file. This exchange has been altered and taken out of context. It's clear there has been some modifications and deletions to make it look bad, where in fact it was a simple request for a photo to facilitate the street casting. The person started contacting us very often, demanding an answer about the casting, and became a bit weird. So Gosha blocked him, and we think this is why the person is trying to make Gosha look bad." So this statement outlined several main rebuttals to the accusations. One, that the boy contacted them first about being street cast, something the team did regularly. Second, the reason Gosha brought up the bathroom was because there was both a mirror and privacy away from those that he was with. Third, modifications and deletions have been made to take their conversation out of context to make Gosha look bad. And fourth, Gosha blocked the boy after the exchange became strange, and they believe this is the motivation for the screenshots being sent to the media. However, even if this was true, the controversy actually hadn't ended. Specifically, Diet Prada continued to post about these accusations, including showing t-shirts where Gosha had printed his photography of young boys from earlier collections. There was another screenshot from a Facebook post that the names are blurred out that accused Gosha in previous experiences with the poster to be sexually interested in minors. And at some point, attention was brought to Gosha's previous alleged boyfriend, Valentin Fufev, who was at the time of their relationship 16 years old. Though it has to be said that I couldn't find any evidence personally of the two actually dating, only that Valentin was on Gosha's team. Plus, Jan posted a response to the rebuttal on the HFT Facebook group in which he said that he was not knowingly being streetcast during the discussion and instead was contacting Gosha regarding interviewing him for a school project. So, in reality, the evidence that we have is very he said, she said. But the fury online, at least from what I can remember, was swift and direct in accusing Gosha of pedophilia. Adidas investigated the accusations, but more or less all of the other big names around Rubchinskiy, including Adrian Joff at Dover Street Market, made statements defending the designer. However, considering, as FHTV pointed out, that this was also in the height of the Me Too movement, the pushback that was coming from the public was heightened and led to most, myself included actually, believing that it was this controversy that ended his career. But truly, that's not certain. He had already announced the reduction of the brand away from on-season collections on the 4th of April earlier that year. Seemingly nothing came of the Adidas investigation into the claims, and even in 2019, Adrian Joff at Dover Street Market made statements to say that they will continue to support Gosha due to the extreme lack of evidence of these accusations. It may well have been that his personal controversy ended the brand, but because we don't have documentation, we don't actually know when or if the company itself was shuttered. So it's very hard to know what really caused the end of the company and if this was planned or if it was forced. No further allegations have ever come up against Gosha, at least that I could find, and Comme des Garçons continued to support his new lines like GR Uniforma, which released on March 16, 2019, and actually had an Adidas collab in itself as shown here, all up until 2022 at least, when they did actually part ways, which is when I assumed the label was halted indefinitely. Through all of this time, Gosha has been rather quiet. He was rarely discussed in fashion after the controversy, and it seems as if he would never make a return. That is, until just this week, from another personal project, he came on board with the Yeezy team to work with the artist formerly known as Kanye West. This obviously doesn't really help his controversial public image, but it certainly got people talking about his name again, which may just be his goal. As according to this Business of Fashion article, Gosha has found new financial backing and in the next year, 2024, will aim to relaunch his namesake brand. So I assume he's regained his intellectual property from Comme des Garçons, who purchased it in 2011. We don't actually know any more about this venture yet, but until that time comes, hopefully with everything outlined in this video, you can see why he was so heralded as a designer for bringing forth that Eastern European aesthetics and being exceptionally talented at transferring his design language into various lucrative collaborations, and you can have more information regarding the controversy that may have ended his career. This is a tricky one for me personally because I do not like to put my opinion into my videos, but honestly, my main takeaway from researching this scandal is that there's a lot of power in drama accounts. This obviously can be both good or bad, such as this WWD article, which I will also link below notes, but it's interesting that no one initially involved, neither Jan nor Gosha, said that these were lewd nor nudity soliciting DMs. Only the drama channels did, and of course those that retold the story. I know a lot has been said about the ethics of said channels, especially Diet Prada, in the years following, but it's a shame that these sources that really have the platform to give a voice to the voiceless has to become so controversial or hyperbolic in order to get intellectual share on social media. On one side, they need to do it to get noticed, but on the other hand, it hurts their credibility. Saying that, I don't think we can blame the sources either. Currently, the algorithm praises that kind of behavior because it drives clicks and watch time, and even before this, Vogue magazine also went through a very difficult time of trying to understand what kind of balance they needed to get people to buy the magazine versus having actually useful content inside. Even myself personally, I get less views if I don't use the word fall in my titles, so I'm incentivized to highlight the negative, even if that's completely not the tone of my videos. In the end, there was a lot at play in the fall of Gosha's company, both in his choices and in the controversy that leads it to be a fascinating study on human behavior and the media and algorithms that react to that. I've recently been listening to this book, Visibility Marketing, on Everand, and he said something that reminded me of this situation. I'm probably misquoting, but it was something like, "What is marketing if not the understanding of human behavior?" This, in my opinion, will be what's interesting to discuss on how we move forward from situations like this and also other scandals like the Balenciaga scandal that has such interesting parallels. Are we right to steer away from anything we find suspicious and untrustworthy in such a cutthroat way when really we could be wrong? Should we continue to move together in situations like this using our consumer power to control what we want to see? And what really is the best course of action for us as consumers when faced with a moral dilemma as difficult as this? Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe and hit the like button for more. If you're interested in similar videos but for beauty retailing, check out my beauty channel Underskin linked here, and my Patreon is linked below in case you would like to support further. Special thank yous, of course, to my Patreon patrons, some of whose names are on the screen now.